So, Lucas Sherraden, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yep. So, today we're going after the Uncaged Leader, your book, and right out of the gate, why should the credibility factor, man? I know
Yeah,
you, and yet most of the world may not. So, why should we lean in and pay attention as you share from your book, The Uncaged Leader, with us?
because real honestly, while I don't talk directly about it in the book, the book is a result of my professional career in real estate for 15 years, or since 2008. So it's been more than 15 years, almost 20 years in the real estate space. There was a moment in time, Chris, when I got into real estate in Houston, Texas, in 2008. It was on the back end of like the world's worst banking economic crisis. There was a lot of foreclosures. Many people would look at me and say, "Oh, you're going into real estate? I'm so sorry." It was kind of that type of response. And real honestly, I had just come out of ministry, and all I had ever done as an adult, I started preaching when I was 16 years old. So all I had known was the ministry. I actually have a degree. My degree is the Bachelor of Science in Pastoral Ministries. So what that translates to is I have no employable skills. It's like, what else am I going to do? And and so I watched 3 episodes of House Hunters and decided real estate would be a great career. And I went broke so quickly, Chris. And $100,000 in credit card debt. Within 9 months, I've done one transaction. And I am struggling. Like, I don't know who I am. I'm depressed. I'm no longer preaching. I don't think I'm going to ever impact another life as long as I live. And I just need to go get a job, make money. And, I'm pretty much feeling sorry for myself. And I'm buying into a lot of the stories, the internal chatter inside my head that I'm a bad dad. I'm a bad person. I can't provide for my family. Maybe I need to go back and start preaching just for money. But then do you want to be that guy who preaches for money, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so I'm going broke really, really quick. And there was a moment right before I changed brokerages. I was part of it. I was in the middle of thinking about going to a brokerage that would, give me some training and some help, and which was really profitable in my life. I was at a basketball game, and back then my kids were going to this Christian school, and I have 4 kids, but I have two middle school girls and a high school boy, and they'd play their basketball games. Middle school girls, middle school boys, high school girls, high school boys. So we were like middle school girls, high school boy. I was there all afternoon at this little Christian school basketball game. In between games, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Sherraden, how's your business going?" And I love self-deprecating humor because there's just a lot of content material, Chris. And I said, "Well, as if I will ever sell a house, ha 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 ha." At that time, as I make that comment, my daughter, 8th grade daughter Danielle, comes up and hears that comment. And she just kind of stopped and cocked her head. And I remember she put her hand on my right arm, looked at me with big brown eyes. She said, "You are a good real estate agent, aren't you, Dad?" And it hit me in that exact moment. And I answered her, I said, "Yes, I am." And I finished the statement in my head, and I wasn't 10 seconds ago. And at that moment, I realized I could no longer live off of my default insecure thinking. I could not live based upon my programmed autopilot thinking. I needed to change the way that I was thinking about real estate. And instead of sitting around feeling sorry for myself and worrying about things, what can I actually do to move the ball forward? And that is the birthplace of the Uncaged Leader, because at that moment, I made a decision. So in the next 9 months, I sold 32 units, made $156,000 of GCI. The next year, I doubled my real estate sales business, and then had an opportunity to run a Keller Williams office. Lo and behold, a year later, we're number 8 in the entire nation. Then I had a chance to move to Kansas City, where you and I got to meet, and spent 6 years there, became a team leader Hall of Fame, ended up working for Gary Keller, regional director, taught most of the company how to recruit at one point. And it all stemmed from one moment of making a decision. I have to think differently than I currently am in order to get something different than I want, because the problem that I had was everywhere I go, there I am. And
Hmm.
therefore, the economy wasn't the problem, interest rates wasn't the problem, the market wasn't the problem, the way I was seeing things. So I had to fundamentally change my paradigm, or my mental model, or my programming, however you want to say it, my mindset, so that I could see the world in a way that I need to see it so that I could take care of that little 8th grade daughter.
Powerful story. What a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
when
you
it
know what?
comes, Mhm, go ahead.
It's not about Chris. Honestly, it's not. We've made a lot of money. We've done a lot of fun things. Had a lot of leadership. Have done, grown some pretty cool stuff. Got a lot of accolades. But none of those things matter. It's who the journey has forced me to become that matters, and that's what I wanted to share in this book.
So the title, The Uncaged Leader, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Um, when it comes to so define like, okay, what is a leader and especially what's an uncaged leader? What's that mean?
Yeah. So for me, a leader has nothing to do with position because I think the mother of a 2-year-old is probably the greatest form of leadership. And if you get your 2-year-old to do something that you ask them to do, you're a great leader. And anybody who's ever had a 2-year-old understands exactly what that's like. So for me, a leader is a person who influences people to accomplish a purpose. And so I'm real clear that there are 3 buckets to that definition. That it's a person, bucket number 1, who influences people, bucket number 2, to accomplish a purpose, bucket number 3. And so for me, that could be a school teacher, that could be a single mom, that could be a business executive, that could be a CEO, that could be a manager, that could be the person working at the drive-thru. If you are a person who helps influence people to accomplish a purpose, you are a leader. And for me, an uncaged leader is one who lives outside the cage of thinking by our programming, thinking by our preferences, thinking by without really thinking without thinking. We're not even mindful about how we think. So, an example I use in the book and I use in keynote speeches I give, Chris, is if I had 2 buckets of ice cream and I put them in front of you, one's chocolate, one's vanilla, and you're not on a diet, you're not eating healthy, but you could eat whatever you want. Which are you choosing, vanilla or chocolate?
I'm gonna go with chocolate.
Why'd you choose chocolate?
Well, funny story. Last night, after getting together some business owners in the community, my son Matthew wanted some ice cream. So we went to the local ice cream shop. I'm standing there and like, man, for me, I just don't feel good when I consume sugar. And so I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
across the street, made my family wait in the car as I went in and got uh, it's called protein pint, 30 grams of protein, only 6 grams of sugar, and I was able to eat the whole thing and share some with my daughter, and it was chocolate. So,
So
I
why'd you
guess
choose chocolate?
chocolate, it's usually what I go to, man.
Why?
Haven't really thought much about that. I don't know.
Exactly. See,
Yeah,
and that's my point, is a caged leader. See, with chocolate, you didn't make the decision. Your preferences made the decision on your behalf. So you weren't even necessary in the equation because your preferences automatically kicked in and you said, that's just reality. That's the cage. I don't mind that so much when it comes to chocolate or vanilla. What I do mind it is, why is your organization repelling people outside your world? Why is it that people aren't attracted to you? Why is it that you seem to do the same pattern over and over and over and over again? That, for me, Chris, is the cage. That when I'm living a life that is mindless, that I'm just going through the motions of life, I'm saying the same things I always say, I'm choosing the same choices I always make, and then I'm blaming it on fate. I'm blaming it on God. I'm blaming it on the economy. I'm blaming it on everything else. Why I get the same exact output. That's the cage. And most people, it's a whole science of metacognitions. Most people are not aware that they have never thought about how they think. They just think that's how they're wired. And I want to say that's a cage and it's a prison and it's a trap and it's limiting our achievement and our possibilities. In research for this book, Chris, I came across a fascinating story. I'm a history guy. I love history. And one
let's
of
hear it.
the history periods that I've enjoyed studying is of all of Hitler's Nazi Germany and how in the world did we get to that place where the Holocaust happened and that atrocity and
Yeah,
after Hitler was defeated, the Soviet Union and the other allies decided that we're going to go to Germany and we're going to divide Germany east and west. But there was one city, for whatever reason, Berlin was the city. They said, you know what? Soviets said, we're going to have East Berlin and the rest of the world's going to have West Berlin. West Berlin was going to be free, democratic, capitalistic, and East Berlin was going to be communist. And when the East Berlin residents heard about it, they were like, oh no. So they started all running to West Berlin. And the Soviets said, whoa, stop that. we're going to build a wall. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Berlin Wall, but they built a literal wall between East Germany, East Berlin and West Berlin. And when it first was erected, and barbed wire across the top, no East Berlin person could go to West Berlin. West Berlin people could come to East Berlin and visit and go back. But they would shoot people if you tried to cross the wall. They would imprison people if you tried to cross the wall. Nobody from East Berlin was ever going to escape Soviet control. For years, this was a thing. Well, come to find out, when they in the 80s, Ronald Reagan stood up and says, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." They tore down the Berlin Wall. When they were tearing it down, they realized there were large sections of that wall that were not complete, that were in disrepair, that weren't being guarded, that anybody from East Berlin could have easily walked over into West Berlin. But because their mindset believed that that wall was impenetrable, it kept them in captivity. I think a lot of leaders are living inside that cage. They think that this is impossible. They think it can't be done this way. They think with some sort of limiting mindset, and they're completely convinced it's real, and it really isn't.
It's just made up. It's a hallucination, a made up story.
Yeah, I am passionate about helping leaders live their life by vision and not by what is happening, and not being reactive to everything that happens. I'm passionate about taking a stand for principles and for character and for integrity, because I think so many people are doing whatever it takes to get from point A to B, and they don't really care who they run over or what means they have to do, as long as they accomplish the vision. I'm passionate about leaders living a life. I'm passionate about you, Chris. You living a life that you decide to live, not because like, oh, I'm not real good at that, or that's just the way I am, or oh, I'm too afraid of rejection, so I'm not going to make that sales call, or and people don't follow me, so I'm going to pull up short, or I live a life that I could settle for, not a life that is worth living for, right? And I'm passionate about that, and that's what this book is about.
That's so good, Lucas. I got to know you more as a result of being with the, KW local. Keller Williams is where our paths crossed originally, if I remember right. And you kept showing up, meaning once or twice a year, you would put on an event for the city called, it was a wealth building class, wasn't it?
But yeah, we've done
Yeah.
several
And I
things in wealth
remember you
building.
talking about it. It's amazing hearing you talk about this, Lucas, because I could see where, like, for you, I've never heard you speak so plainly about it. And yet, this, I could tell that you've been on the journey, meaning you've been thinking about these things for years. And I'll never forget showing up to this wealth building class. I think even my brother, who lives out of town now, came with me a time or two. And it got to the point, I think in the second time I came to your wealth building talk, I'm sitting in the room and I'm thinking, it hit me. This is the same framework as Lucas talked about last time. And I thought to myself, my aha moment wasn't really anything you said. I it occurred to me, okay, Lucas essentially is sharing the same things. What when am I gonna take some of this and actually apply it and start thinking differently about my life? And so, to me, this is a common message that I'm not surprised hearing you say these things, I guess my point. And yet, to me, it seems like you've been really doing a deep dive, or now you're expressing on a deeper level some of the things that started to pop up. I mean, almost, I think this year would be about a decade ago when you were teaching wealth building across Kansas City, if I remember right.
Well, I think like money is an easy target because we all have a relationship with it. And so when you
Yeah.
teach on wealth building, it exposes the relationship that a person has with money. So coming from the pastor's background, is the most misquoted verse in the Bible is money is the root of all evil. And that is not what the scriptures say at all. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. And if you want to talk about the love of money, I see it with people who don't have it more than I do with the people who have millions. So the people who are sitting in church happy with their, $30,000 annual salary, judging somebody who's driving a Lamborghini, actually are exhibiting the love of money a lot more than the person probably driving the Lamborghini. Because the Lamborghini for that person is probably just an investment that goes up in value every year versus the cars that I drive go down in value every year. So it's like the I think that the reason why that one's an easy one to talk about is it immediately evokes a very mindless reaction because people don't have to think about the relationship with money. And I have discovered too, Chris, that leaders are repeaters because wisdom, Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. The truth is wisdom is timeless. Truth is timeless. And all we do is teach the same truth. It's whether we apply it and execute on it that makes the difference, right? And so, like in the Uncaged Leader, I talk about what's my relationship to failure. I actually have a PhD in that subject. I am really good at failing. I do it a lot. I do it daily, right? But what's my relationship? Is that going to be, do I extract lessons from it, or do I live in regret and shame and guilt, or hide or run or what have you? What's my relationship with success? What's my relationship with creativity? So there's two keys that I that base this book on that for me have been really helpful. One is awareness. So like a moment ago, you'll think about that chocolate ice cream illustration. It's like, how much of my other parts of my life am I just doing because of preference, and I'm not really thinking about what do I choose to do here? And so, like in the real estate space, I'm never going to cold call. Okay, are you making that decision, or are your preferences making that decision for you? What do you mean by that? Well, why won't you make a phone call? Well, that's just not me. Okay, that sounds like a preference. That doesn't sound like a decision. you know, it's like, I won't do open houses. I won't do door knocking. I won't call internet leads or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Your preference is making a decision. And as long as you're fine with that output, I'm not going to disrupt that because autopilot thinking is very helpful. I don't want you to, if somebody pulls out in front of you today as you drive, I don't want you to think about what to do. I want you to react. Go to
Mhm.
autopilot thinking, right? But man, when it
Is
comes to
autopilot thinking the same thing as, like, on a subconscious level where, like, doing it without really being aware?
it's that's why the book is based first of all on awareness, because I don't think we're aware of when we do that or when we don't do that. In fact, I ran across a study, Chris, that Tasa Urich out of Harvard Business School. I did a study on self-awareness in America, and she found out that 95% of Americans believe that they're self-aware. So nearly everybody listening to this podcast believes that they're self-aware. Only 10% actually are. And here's what's amazing about that is I say that in a room and there's people in groups of, 10 tables of 10 says, okay, in this table, all 10 of you think that you're self-aware. Only one of you are, and all of you are convinced that you're that one. You're totally convinced that you know yourself. And the truth is, why do I do what I do? Why do I go left instead of right? Why do I make this choice? Why, when I get this bill in the mail, do I have the same emotional reaction every time? When I hear a speaker say something from the front of the room, why do I have this reaction? Why do I do what I do? Most of it is we're just in autopilot thinking, which is a cage when it comes to leadership.
Cage meaning it'll hold us back from
Well,
something?
yeah, because if you keep thinking the same way that you've been thinking, that's welcome to reality. You're going to stay there, right? It's 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 how do I choose to respond? The story of two British shoe salesmen at the turn of the century going from Britain to India on a train, and they get off the train. The first one gets off and looks around and says, "Oh my gosh, no one here wears shoes. Cancel my order." The second one gets off, says, "Oh my gosh, double my order. The prospects are unlimited." Same event, two totally different responses. And so the cage is when I'm not mindful of how I see the world. Here's a great illustration too, Chris, is think about it this way, is life shows up, content shows up. We have very little control over that. Stuff just happens. Each one of those snapshots, we have the pen in our hand of what are we going to caption that snapshot. The snapshot has nothing to do with how we're going to show up, but the caption has everything to do with how we're going to show up. So if I have, like in keynotes that I talk about, I'll
Mhm.
often show a picture of a man and he's with his son, probably 7, 8-year-old son, holding hands on a pristine beach, azure blue, clear water, palm trees. You can see the wind maybe just gently blowing. And I'll ask people, hey, how do you feel about this picture? And they go, oh, well, it's great. We love it. It's beautiful. I said, okay, caption it for me. Uh, and so if I had that picture, what would be some captions you would give it?
The scene at the beach, I would say life is good is what comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, life is good. Because without thinking about it mindlessly, you put a very positive caption underneath the picture, right? And so you feel good about it. So let me change how you would look at that picture. And I'm not going to change the content. I'm going to change the context. Let's say I put a caption under that says this: "Man spends final days with terminally ill son." How do you feel about the picture now?
To have to switch it to legacy or something. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So content
Context
doesn't matter.
different.
Context matters. Life shows up. That doesn't matter as much as what is the context we put around whatever content shows up. And great leaders know how to help shape the context to whatever the content is. That's leadership. And that's getting outside the cage.
That reminds me, I've heard great leaders teach people how to think.
That's right.
It reminds me of that, Lucas. Ooh, so it's like, okay, so this kind of reminds me of some things I heard in the NLP world, neuro linguistic programming,
Yeah,
if I said that
absolutely.
right,
You
where
did.
it's like the lab, how's it go? The the words I choose to describe my reality become my reality. Is it
Yeah.
kind of like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And so
That's interesting.
yeah, it's fascinating that two people can see the exact same thing and have
Yeah.
completely different responses. You've seen this. You've done enough coaching, especially like in the real estate space. We all have 24 hours. We all have so many transactions that are going to take place next month. And you have one agent with relatively the same intelligence as another agent. And this one agent has 10 closings. The other agent's going broke. They had the same opportunity, the same intelligence level. They just made up a different story. They made up a different context to whatever they were going to do with their day based upon thinking. So I want to think in such, the Bible says it, that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. I want to think in a way that impacts the world instead of howling at the moon and wishing that things were different.
Hmm. So aware in this, if I'm tracking with you, it starts with self awareness.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I would just keep doing the same thing
that's
over
right.
and over and
Yeah.
calling it life. Okay.
Calling it
So
fate.
how how do I hearing that? I'm like, okay, how I want to. Is there like an assessment? How do I become more self aware, man? How do I become the one out of the 10?
Well, buy my book in August.
Okay, fair. 5 pieces. Okay,
No,
very good. I see what you did
actually,
there.
I think my book does a good job of raising the question and not solving the problem. I mean, if I'm being fair to my book, is that
I
I,
see.
I raised the challenge that we have in I call it in the book awareness intelligence problem, AQ. IQ, we have intelligence quotient, we've got EQ, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. I think that we need to grow, and honestly, it's a part of emotional intelligence is becoming more self-aware of actually taking time to think about why did we think that way. Actually, spending time to say why did that excite me, or why did I laugh at that, or why did that make me sad, or why did I get angry, or why did I avoid that, and just call it that's my personality. Like you and I are both talkers, and so a lot of times we'll say, well, we talk because that's just how I'm wired. Well, really? Or did we just talk because we were nervous? Or did we just talk because we were insecure? Or did we just talk because we were uncomfortable with the silence? Whatever it is, something happens and I have an angry reaction. Maybe take some time just to reflect on what about that caused me to have that reaction? Why did I do that? If you have an addiction, why did I start this? What's the root cause of this? My youngest daughter is a family therapist, so we geek out on this. We'll spend hours talking about this. I want people just to start asking the question: am I really aware of what's going on underneath the surface? Because the conscious mind, I'm aware of those thoughts, but I'm not really aware of the subconscious mind, which is about 90% of all thinking. And so, why am I doing what I do? And by the way, if it's working and you like the output, keep it going. But if you don't like the output, challenge that there may be a new way of thinking. So first is awareness. The second is I want the book hinges on the idea of curiosity, and I did a lot of research on curiosity. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of books written on curiosity. How do I increase curiosity? How do I be more curious? What else could this mean? Is a key question I ask in the book. Is what else could this be? Somebody yells at you on the phone, you hang up and like, oh man, that nasty person, and it ruins your day. It's like, well, what else could it be? I joke around, maybe that person didn't breastfeed long enough as a baby. And all of a sudden I laugh. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so silly. But is it possible? Maybe. I don't know. the point isn't that other person, the point is me. But when I'm curious, I can create. When I'm judgmental, I'll kill off all other possibilities. So I want to be very curious in life because I believe, especially you and I come from the same faith background as a Christian, I believe we were designed in the image of a creator. And yet what we do in our life is we don't create. We just simply respond. So how do I create something new? Because that's the image that I'm created in. That's who I'm that's my design. I'm designed to be a creator. Judgmental people can't create because judgmental people want to say this is right and this is wrong. Curious people can create, right?
Mm.
Especially as a Christian, Chris, I think about this a lot. If the church is known by anything right now, it's known really because it's judgments. It says this person's right, this person's wrong, this person uses this kind of language, this person doesn't, this person has this kind of sexual preference, this person doesn't. And we are known for standing for stuff. What would it be if we were known for how curious we are and how much life we bring to the world and how we love people extravagantly? That would be completely different. What if the church was the epicenter? What if Christians were the epicenter for all innovation because we understand that our created design is to be creators? What if we were here to provide real solutions, not just come to our church meeting and join our men's group, real solutions to real people's real problems? What if we got curious about that instead of saying, well, they just don't know it. I'm driven by this idea of what, where in my world am I fixed in the way I'm thinking? And I need to be a whole lot more curious.
Man, that's so good. I mean, just right there, you gave some gold, Lucas. Gold, where it's you ask 5 or 10 great questions. So it sounds like a big part of curiosity is instead of making statements or assumptions, kind of like with the beach scenario, is not making statements or assumptions, but being curious and asking questions.
Yeah. And I honestly ask you a lot of questions of ourselves. And trust me, Chris, leaders are paid. Leaders are compensated and based upon their judgment. They have to make a call. They have to make a judgment call. They have to say, this is what we're going to do, right? But prior to that, I think there could be a space of curiosity. What else could it mean? What else could we do with this? What else could what else could we create? If anything was possible, what would we do? If money weren't an issue and failure weren't an option, what would we create? I just really am very curious. What if that was the world that we let in?
Man, this is taking me back, Lucas. I remember you challenged me. We were having a conversation a few years ago. You already know where I'm going, I bet. And you said, Chris, don't use the terms we're familiar with in this particular organization and brand. Here's a blank piece of paper. Tell me about the opportunity you would create. And I was stumped. And it took me a solid about 2 years, and I'm still on the journey
I
of
remember.
unpacking that and figuring out what that looks like.
Yeah,
And yet, it's one of those things where it's definitely it sounds so simple, but it's not easy.
yeah.
Not
Well,
easy. It's more convenient to grab terms and try to piece things together, AKA grab that chocolate ice cream instead of the peanut butter chip one that I thought, "Oh,
maybe.
wonder what that would taste like," but I went with that chocolate.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, to be fair, Chris, we're programmed from an early age to not think, not create. We're just actually. I would challenge the world to say, as children, we don't teach kids how to think. We teach them thoughts to have. Johnny, that's good. Johnny, that's bad. We don't teach Johnny, well, what do you think about that? Why do you think that's okay to do? We don't challenge thinking. We just try to put thought imposition into our kids. And so when we grow up to be an adult, we're not trained real well to how do we think? I'm serious. There's a whole burgeoning uh, uh, bunch of material on metacognition. And it's fascinating to me is thinking about thinking. Where did that thinking come from? And how did you get there? And how do I need to think in a way that I need to think so I can get even the person that taught me that statement as a leader, as a person who teaches people how to think, has a very fixed mindset. it's like it's like I come find out, wow, you're very much this is the way you're gonna do things, period. This is how you're gonna treat people, period. Well, and I'm
Fixed.
no human being's perfect. I want to get a little bit better at least.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, which ties into the awareness piece. You got me thinking now. The big word you use,
Meta
metacognition. What
big
does that
it's the only, like, multiple syllable word I know, Chris, so it's like, metacognition is cognition meaning thinking, meta means
okay.
about. So it's thinking about thinking, combining those two
Okay.
words. Yeah. And a
Huh,
lot of
okay.
people are doing a lot of research in that in this right now. But there's a book by Ellen Langer who comes out of Harvard. It's called Mindfulness, and it's not about the meditation movement and being mindful of that, which there's a lot of merit to that. But she's talking about like mindfulness as an opposition to you sitting down with a bag of potato chips, and by the end of the ball game, the whole bag's gone because you just mindlessly ate them, or you're driving from Lee Summit to Overland Park, and then you're like, wait a second, how did I get to Overland Park? Because you mindlessly drove to Overland Park. So being mindful, I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about. I'm very mindful about what I put in my mouth, or I'm very mindful about what I'm saying, or how I'm responding, or how I use my time. Fascinating thinking. And she contextualizes it in the aging is when you start to get old and your body starts to hurt, you mindlessly start to buy into society's like, oh, my body's falling apart. Oh, I'm starting to lose my memory. Oh, I'm starting to lose my eyesight. And you start to mindlessly buy into what you're being told instead of being mindful about what you're thinking about.
Okay, so we have awareness, we have curiosity. Is there some other key things that you emphasize in on your book on this?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The two everything hinges on those two things. And Chris, it really comes down to toward the end of it is, and I know you're big into legacy. And I've written a book that I'm hoping works. We're not guaranteed anything. I'm going to do everything I can to get it in the hands of as many people as I can, because I really do think it could alter the course of somebody's, future. I really do think that if that it has that potential. The other reason why I wrote a book is because it's maybe one stab of something I could do that might live 100 years past me, right? And I remember I moved back to Kansas City where you and I met. I moved back to Kansas City from Houston, Texas, because my mom was fighting cancer at that time, and became a team leader at a Keller Williams office. And we're going along, and a couple years later, the doctor called our family in and just had the conversation with my mom. When a doctor makes a house visit, it's not going to be a good conversation. So, and I remember him saying word for word, Chung, there comes a point in everybody's life that they have to confront their own mortality, and you're not going to beat cancer this time. And the room, I mean, literally, the whole family was there. The room fell apart. And I remember my mom sitting in a high back wing back chair, green chair, and I remember her just shaking her head. She didn't cry. She just shook her head. She says, "Oh, cancer." And for whatever reason, in that moment while we fell apart, my mom made a different decision that if she only had a couple months to live, she was going to really live. And a part of that was to have some crucial conversations. So a couple of weeks before she eventually passed, my dad needed to, and I shared the story in the book. My dad needed to go out and run some errands, so he needed me to come over and help my mom. At that point, she was so weak she couldn't like get herself up and get herself into bed, and so she was going to need my help to get into bed. And so we were sitting there before she went to bed, and we're talking. And she goes, "Lucas, I want to have a conversation with you." I said, "Okay." I'm like, what do I do? She goes, I want you to do my funeral. I'm like, no, mom, I'm not doing your funeral. She says, yes, you're going to do my funeral. And this is what you're going to say at my funeral. You're going to say this. You're going to thank your dad about this. You're going to say these words. You're going to tell people that Jesus loves them. You're going to tell them how to get saved. It's all this stuff. This is what you're going to do, right? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm going to do that. Then she said, the second thing, she said, I've noticed that in your life, you're really succeeding. You're winning a lot of awards. You're being recognized as a leader, and you're making a lot of money. And I just want you to know, I'm so proud of you. I said, well, thanks, Mom. She says, but I need you to promise me something. Anybody can make money. I need you to promise me that you will live to make a difference. And so I wrote this book as an honor and a tribute to that promise, that I want to make a difference because anybody can make money. I want leaders listening to this to make a difference, to wake up every day. How do I make a difference? And the way that we've been thinking, Chris, isn't going to get the job done. And 100% of the profits for this book is going to go to, I'm not going to take a penny from this book. 100% of the profits I'm going to give away to stopping human trafficking. So a book that at its heart to make a difference in leaders' life, any profit from the book is going to go to stopping something that is atrociously happening in our world. And the only time we talk about it is to point a finger at and accuse a politician for engaging in it, and we're not taking care of the problem. We're just using it for political purposes right now. And so I want to do something about that. And so for me, this book is I could teach you how to make $1 million next year if you want to do it. It's just input output game. It's pretty easy. I want you to make a difference. And that is historic and that's monumental. And that's why I wrote the book.
What a beautiful way to honor your mother.
Yeah. Hope so.
Wow.
Yeah. Hope so.
Yeah. So for somebody out there listening, how would they know if this is the book they should order, Lucas? Like what's going on in their world to where you're like, you would be confident where mission critical, double click, order, expedite the shipping. This is for you.
I really wrote this because I have a belief that we're all leaders. So I really wrote this book for everybody. In fact, somebody suggested as they read the manuscript to give me some input on it, said, you ought to call this the everyday leader because this really is for every leader, whether you're a husband leading a marriage, a wife leading a marriage, if you're wanting just to lead yourself better, if you're wanting to lead kids, if you're wanting to lead in your organization, I think the world needs leaders. So I think this book really is for everybody. Yeah, so but I'm very biased about that, Chris. So I think everybody ought to buy,
Yeah,
a dozen copies or so.
sure. Are you going to open up or do you envision any group coaching or anything becoming
It's
of this at
possible.
some point?
In fact, the
Yeah.
meeting before this one, I was talking to, do we do like weekend retreats? Do we do group coaching? Do I actually find people who love to coach and certify them in the Uncaged Leader coaching process? Do I certify coaches? And there's a lot of things
Okay.
possible. I think that when the manuscript was done, I had a lot of input to ask me to do a lot of things. And I started a group coaching program. It's like, you know what? All I want to do right now is get the book out and get
Yeah.
pre-orders in between now. August 4th is when it comes out. So I want to get as many pre-orders that should open up in the next week or two. Get as many people to sign up at the, on the website to buy the book and to tell as many people inside their circles that, gosh, I think this guy's got a message that resonates that could really alter the course of human history. I think I'm going to buy it. I think you ought to buy it. I think I ought to buy it from a whole organization, for my entire church body, whatever. Because I think that, well, honestly, the message of think differently is needed right now. So
Mhm. Yeah, definitely, I agree. I've heard that with getting groups together, all groups are better and more effective on a Viking cruise, so there's something to
you know what,
consider.
brother? You know what? I tell you what. After this book sells 1 million copies, Chris Ward and I are taking a group of people on a Viking cruise, and we'll do the Uncaged Leader Viking cruise. How's that sound?
Let's go, there we go. Very
So give me
good,
to 1 million
Lucas.
copies, brother.
Hey, so, where I'll share the link, of course, on YouTube and on social media. Is there a website you'd like to
Yeah,
point people to if they found value in today's conversation and
sure,
they wanna order a copy,
sure.
Lucas?
It's just simply theuncagedleader.com. They could go there
Okay, very good.
and if there's some things, if they sign up, there's some things where I'm sending out some weekly videos, some leadership lessons, and what have you. And some more things are coming down the pike about that as well. So
A few months ago, you shared online that you were looking to have a kind of like you didn't say experimental, but you're looking to just try something, meaning getting together a group of people
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and go through some of the content from your book. And so immediately, without any questions, I signed up for it and jumped in and met with you
You
for a
did.
few weeks to hear some of this. And looking back, because that's been a few months ago, I think at this point, there's one thing that really stuck out with me, Lucas. And it's the idea that this is my words of what it meant to me is for years I would look at my past and compare my how I would describe my reality now. I would compare it to my past and say, well, wow, look how far. I'm not living in pay by the week motels and all the some of these things have changed, but you proposed you flipped the script on me, man. You said, what would it look like if you took your life right now and you didn't base it off of how you were doing in the past, but you compared it to the potential of your future? And I'm still unpacking that, and yet that flipped the script on me. That's the one thing that when I think about, why I don't believe in coincidences. So it's like, okay, I was in that group. What did I get out of that? That was a timely message for me. So thank you for
Absolutely.
flipping my world upside down on that one.
And thanks for being a part of that group. Thanks
It
for
was
being
my
about
pleasure. Yeah, it was
living from a sense of vision and future is so much more powerful and yet more frightening than living from our past and our history because we know the past. But the truth is, the past only exists. And I don't want to get down too much of a rabbit hole in this, but the past, the future only exist right now and how we think about it. Right. Well, what
yeah.
happened at that group coaching, well, it only exists now in the language you use to talk about the past. The future only exists right now in the language that you use to describe it. So all we really have is now, now, and now. We don't have past, present, future. We have now, now, and now. And I think that and I know that if we're going to be uncaged and live in a world of unlimited possibilities, we envision the future and we use the past as wisdom points to know how to deal with the present. But we live based upon future present, not past present. You think about your marriage. If you want to have an amazing marriage, paint it in your head first. What's the perfect marriage? What's the perfect husband? Become that person and let that inform your present and use your past as wisdom points saying, okay, if I'm going to be that person in the future, I know that my past tells me that doesn't work. So I'm going to find a way to make it work. It becomes life then becomes an adventure instead of Groundhog Day all over again.
Have you read any of Dr. Benjamin
Oh
Hardy's
yeah, Ben Hardy. Yeah,
Be Your Future Self Now?
yeah, and the science of
Or
scaling. I've read all of his stuff. Yeah.
okay,
In
yeah.
fact, I was
Right
on a Zoom
on.
with him 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay. That's a timely word for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Lucas. Thank you for being a guest on
Oh
the
yeah.
podcast channel.
Absolutely.
And I wish you all the
Well,
success. I
thank you, man.
trust that all the people who are in the spot where they're open to receive the message that's in your book, I trust that they'll grab their copy and hear what they need to hear.
Me too.
Thank you.
You betcha, man.